Okay, want to get things started with Heather Dietrick. Heather is the CEO of Daily Beast, and we are going to be discussing making politics pay and how the Daily Beast is sort of punching above its weight with the Trump-Russia story. Heather.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
See, the standing isn't that bad.
It's awkward. That's what I've been
It's not
telling you.
awkward. It's
Come
not
on,
awkward.
How about a chair?
Okay, so I've been asking everyone who comes up here. Let's talk about your portfolio, your audience portfolio, because a lot of people's portfolios were over-indexed. They were over-indexed on the audience side on Facebook, and they were over-indexed on the revenue side in advertising. So let's start with the audience side.
Okay. So I will be truthful that we took some knocks from Facebook probably a little over a year ago, but we never really over-indexed for Facebook or built the business around it. I think our strategy was more leverage Facebook, but don't totally lean on it. And when you totally leaned on it, you built one pillar, if not more, on Facebook's offering. So. And this is all with the benefit of hindsight, I should say, at this point, that, now we know what the results were. But
what was the peak of Facebook as far as referrals?
For us?
Yeah.
Right now, it's about 10%, probably down 20%.
Okay, but it was never like 30% of traffic.
No, never a significant driver. But as we saw the Facebook decline happening, we thought it was smart to diversify. And so we've partnered with Flipboard. We have Flipboard magazines for a lot of our verticals, and a lot of the content is viewed through an RSS feed, but we also pitch stories to Flipboard in the mornings, and when we break news, we'll send it over and just keep an open dialogue with them. We leverage Reddit by having our journalists engage with the audience there, do AMAs. Flipboard has now actually eclipsed Facebook as our third biggest referrer behind.
So Flipboard is bigger than Facebook for you?
It is,
wow,
behind
that's
Google
impressive.
and Twitter.
And is a lot of that because you can pitch directly to the editors there?
I think that.
I mean, you develop a relationship.
Yeah, you develop a relationship.
It's not like some algorithm that you don't know why.
You'd have to ask them for sure, but as I understand it, they are kind of hand curating content that works for their audience. And they have a belief in real journalism and deep reporting like we do, so we're good partners for each other right now.
Okay, how about direct?
We have a little over a third of our traffic coming direct to the homepage, which is extraordinarily high, I think, for a publisher.
That's great.
Right now.
I mean, prior to this, you were at Gawker.
Yes.
And Gawker had a lot of direct traffic.
Yes,
there,
we did.
Right?
Yes, we had a hyper-engaged community, largely because of this complex commenting system that we had built. So we had people coming in direct because they wanted to participate in the community. We have people coming into the Beast direct because they want to hear the Beast's point of view on all sorts of topics, see what news we're breaking, and then also see us weigh in on science, health, politics, entertainment.
Okay, how about Twitter? Twitter hasn't come up that much.
Twitter has been a major traffic source for us and has been up like over 50% year over year. I think that's because we have really...
Just Trump mania.
So Trump stuff does really well on Twitter, and we also hire journalists who are prominent in their fields, who are really well sourced, and who are willing to engage with the audience on Twitter. Okay,
one of the things that we've heard a lot about is Apple News. It's sort of the quiet force among platforms. It's a hopeful case study. A lot of people are seeing a lot of traffic there. Of course, it's the same story, not much monetization, but
yes, but
there's hope.
Yeah. We've heard the same thing that hasn't escaped our attention, and so we just undertook the somewhat substantial dev lift to get connected with Apple News literally like days before I arrived here, and so we'll see. But we hear the same thing. A lot of publishers get a lot of traffic from there. Even if there isn't a path to monetization, you don't have the risk that you had with Facebook where you're orienting your whole business around it. You do what you do best, send it out on the platform, and even if there isn't a path to monetization right now, I think it's a great marketing vehicle. Get your stories out there.
So how are you approaching Facebook now as part of your strategy?
continue to leverage it like we do all the other platforms. So I talked about sort of orienting our journalism to perform well on Reddit or well on Twitter. We do the same for Facebook. We attempt to engage the audience there. We've created Facebook groups, and I think some publishers' Facebook groups have just been sort of another news feed. We have gotten our journalists to try to talk to the audience, because our hyper-engaged audience is super interested in what our journalists have to say on certain topics. That happens to dovetail well with what you hear Facebook's new strategy is about encouraging the development of groups and real engagement on the platform.
Are you going to be able to monetize that?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I don't know. I would say it's light enough lift that it's okay if we can't. What's really interesting for us is getting a conversation going with the audience. So the more you do that, the more you can start converting people who are coming in once and might be one and done because they saw something in their feed, and now they're staying a little longer, and now they're getting to know the brand and they're getting to know the writers, and so likely
it's a marketing
they'll come back
vehicle.
again. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Are you doing Facebook Watch?
We are not, but we are in Facebook's new breaking news program. So
okay.
We can take advantage of a little widget or a tool once a day when we have a big breaking story, and they sprinkle some magic dust on it or whatever. They'll have to say what they do with it to propel it into the feed.
Okay, so your relationship with Facebook is fine. It's
good.
It's not critical to your future.
It's not critical, but they're a great partner.
Okay. How about video? The pivot to video became a punchline pretty quickly last year, and it was blamed for a lot of companies going down. Video is a big lift. There's not immediate payoff.
Yes. We did not pivot to video, and so we didn't suffer.
That's why you're here.
Yes. It wasn't, at the time, it wasn't a crazy bet. If you had a lot of capital, a lot of outside investment, like some competitor publishers did, it looked like there might be a lot of appetite for video and a lot of dollars there. That didn't exactly pan out, and a lot of that appetite was coming through platforms like Facebook, and so when they change their prioritization, then it falls off. It was such a huge risk because video is just so expensive to produce. For us, we just didn't see a way that was totally obvious to connect with the audience. So a lot of the billion video views that you see a publisher getting are coming from things that are getting farther and farther away from publishers' core offering. So once you're down the road of getting a lot of views on cat videos and you're just doing more and more, for us, anyhow, that didn't make sense. We want to tell our audience what's really going on in the world. We want to describe what's happening in the news and the entertainment field, and so we didn't see an immediate way to do that and get a lot of video views such that it would make that investment worthwhile.
So you did not pivot to food videos?
We did not pivot to food videos.
Okay. So let's talk about the revenue side of things, because I said a lot of people over-indexed in advertising, and now they're scrambling to de-risk, I guess, with subscriptions and licensing and commerce and all sorts of things.
Sure.
What is the revenue breakdown when it comes to advertising versus the other areas?
Over half of our revenue is coming in from advertising still. We still believe in advertising, I will say.
Yeah.
I know there's a narrative out there that there's a lot of interest in news-based content, but it's also scary for advertisers because it can be sometimes negative and a little dark. But at the same time, there's a lot of interest around positive kind of issue advocacy around things that we report on very deeply, like diversity, women's issues, LGBTQ issues that advertisers are interested in getting next to, like messages of support and kindness and the good things happening in the world. And so it's a way to bring kind of what we do best and leverage it for advertisers, which is getting the audience hyper engaged in these categories. So I'll say we still believe in advertising, but it's smart in this world, given the power of the duopoly, to diversify. And so we have started to experiment in e-commerce and are looking at subscription.
So let's talk about the commerce. Like what is your take on the commerce? Because everyone has a different version of it.
My take is that this should not be a revenue play first and foremost. This should be a service of the readership first and foremost. So you have built this audience, built this trust with the audience, like the Beast has with your great reporting and storytelling, and you want to leverage that into commerce, and so you want to give them the same sort of experience. You want to show them things that are really useful for their lives, surprising,
so like what kind of
interesting.
Stuff? Like what?
I think it works best when you draft off of the journalism. So. Where I came, the Gawker Media family really started the kind of commerce business on the web via publishing, and realized that Lifehacker is never going to do well selling books about politics. You know, what they will do well is pitching books about self-help and reviewing them. So you're drafting off those same categories. We take that same approach at The Beast. We do a lot of reporting on national security, on information security, and so posts about what VPN is the best for you to use do really well. Okay. When Michael Wolff's book comes out and there's just so much talk about it, and we are talking about it and explaining and criticizing, that's something we can also link to. And
the book, not like Michael Wolff t-shirts.
The book, not t-shirts, yeah. But the audience is super engaged in that moment, and they have a lot of intent. We understand that 50% of our audience, when they leave a Beast experience, they're done reading articles or watching videos, wants to do something. And that can mean they want to find out more about the topic, they want to talk to a friend about it or comment about it online, or they want to pick up the phone and call their senator, and we can apply that same proclivity towards action into a commerce business.
Okay, so it's still incremental.
It's still incremental.
Like less than 10%.
Yes, but because we're taking it slow to gather data on what the audience is interested in. We're super excited that we see that the audience trusts the Beast. Our propensity to purchase is like 3 times the industry average, which is great. Conversion rates are super high, double or 3 times the industry average. And so, but as I said, we want to serve them things that are useful and in service of why they come.
Yeah. So, I mean, you get a lot of direct traffic. You have, brand affinity there. Where's the subscription plan? Why can't I pay you?
We're exploring that. It's about a lot of, actually, some people have written in and say, why can't we pay you? And so for there, we're doing a lot of deep data gathering on our audience.
What specifically are you, a lot of people, we've heard, are on the road to figuring out their own sort of subscription and membership program. What are the steps that you're going through in figuring out what's right for this brand and this audience?
So figuring out who our audience is and what they're interested in and where they are really engaged. Because we want to provide something. Probably won't be a paywall, but it'll probably be an additional access point. So we understand our audience is really interested in our journalists, for an example. So when we think about things to offer the audience as part of a subscription, it is kind of a more private, exclusive experience with the journalists.
So it sounds more membership rather than, because I always think you can either cut off access at some point, or you can try to create a sort of differentiated product from your free ad-supported product.
Right, that's right.
Right, so you're more, it sounds like, in the camp of don't cut off access. Like when you guys break a Trump-Russia story, are you going to put up a paywall?
We want to tell the world. Right now, we want to tell the world. Right. So but never say never, but I will say we're moving down the road of providing something extra, something that's added value.
Any timing about when we can expect this? When I'll be able to pay you?
Not yet. But I would say soon, this year.
Okay, so Trump's been great for business, right?
No doubt the audience is hyper engaged around Trump content. The Beast, honestly, was probably built to handle an entity, like a phenomenon like Trump. We've been totally oriented around holding power to account, telling the world what's really going on, and breaking big stories. We built this really first-class politics team, national security, tech team that all work together to reveal things like Russia's interference in the election and the various groups. So it's good for business in that way. As a deep supporter of the First Amendment, you'll never get me to just say purely Trump is good for the media,
right? Because
I would take issue with that.
Right.
But the audience is certainly engaged and invigorated by what's happening, and it's also very confusing. There's just an onslaught of information, and part of what we do is help the audience navigate this really messy news landscape.
Right. So was there any? How big is your reporting team?
About 50 journalists.
Okay. I mean, this is a gigantic story, but you've got people like the New York Times and Washington Post just like throwing so many resources at it. Was there any sort of decision that like, do we really want to try to, carve out our own place in this story? Or do we want to do other stuff?
I think there was never a question that we wouldn't. It's just one of the biggest stories of our age. But there's certainly a decision point around building a team that is capable to handle it and is hungry to go after these kinds of scoops. And so we built the politics team kind of concurrent with the early days in the election. And we actually compete with the Washington Post and the New York Times, who have like 2,000 plus journalists for some of these stories. Yeah,
it's been impressive to see that places like the Daily Beast and Axios, Axios particularly with a very small team, are able to have such an impact on such a big story.
Yes. Yeah, it's about reporters who are really well sourced, who get out from behind their computers and they make calls and they put boots on the ground and they visit their sources and they develop them. Right. And you can play with the big guys that way.
So do you have many advertisers that say, just keep me away from this stuff?
We certainly have ones that say, look, the Trump stuff is too heavy for us right now, but we know that your audience is spending 5+ minutes with it and 6+ minutes on your other verticals. And so I want a way in to that kind of intent, to that feeling of engagement. Like I kind of imagine when we're talking about building your business on Facebook and the audience engagement level there, I sort of, to personify that, I imagine the audience who's looking through a lot of lists of things. Maybe they're spending a lot of minutes, but they're kind of slumped back. I imagine an audience looking at our kind of content, sitting upright with their eyes wide open. And so we have advertisers who want to tap into that.
But they might not be in the right mindset for considering that whatever product you're putting in front of them. I mean, there's a lot of like rage reading too.
Yeah. Well, so we have safe spaces for advertisers to tap into that. And we created a science vertical, and we talk a lot about sort of the administration's assault on science. But then we also started a sub vertical called Hunt for the Cure, and we talk about all the amazing innovations out there. And we have a year-long pharmaceutical partner sponsoring that vertical. So that's a way to tap into that engagement.
Right. So prior to the Daily Beast, you were president of Gawker Media. I'm going to ask the Gawker questions now. You ready?
It took you this long, so that's fine.
I know. Heather appreciates that I wait to the end, not at the beginning. There's now been distance between, when Gawker went into bankruptcy and now.
Yes.
Looking back, what are 2 or 3, big takeaways that you have now that there is some distance?
Sure. So last time we talked about this, I told you there are different takeaways for different audiences, and I talked about one for journalists, which is probably more advice than a learning, but it is, do not be scared by this, by what happened to Gawker. There is deep value in holding powerful people to account, and that should be your focus. There are always legal concerns and access concerns and angry investors, but focus on what your job is, which is to reveal things about the world. But for this room, who I assume is filled with more media executives, I think there's a lesson around orienting your business around a North Star. Gawker was very, very mission-driven. Everyone in the business, whether you were a seller or an engineer or a journalist, kind of was there for this journalistic mission. And so in every media business, things will get hard. You'll have to make really hard decisions. Probably not as hard as they got for Gawker, hopefully. But when you have a business where everyone is not just driven to hit a number, that's kind of ancillary. They're driven for this core mission. When things are tough, you will have people standing shoulder to shoulder like we did at Gawker and not fleeing or taking you down on Twitter. And so that was incredibly important to getting the business through and in the warm embrace of Univision, the ultimate buyer.
Any regrets?
No.
Okay. There's been a lot of turmoil when it comes to particularly the VC-funded media companies, digital media companies. A lot of layoffs, talk of more layoffs.
Right.
Some shut down. Is this just mismatched expectations?
Yes. I think that's exactly right. I think there was a fervor around investing in media, and some organizations signed up to really astronomical goals. And a lot of those organizations that aren't hitting them are kind of getting dinged in the press and in some trade publications. But I think if you dig into their businesses, they're still quite healthy. They just didn't hit these.
They're just
really
not billion-dollar businesses.
They're probably not billion-dollar businesses, and they didn't hit these really insane, traffic metrics and other things, somewhat due to the Facebook downturn. But they're still good, healthy businesses.
Okay. Heather, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.